if you have something that inherently bothers you all the time and you are pouring yourself into everything else so that it can show up as like, I'm fine because these things, but this one thing is killing me, I promise you, you are not yourself. You are not showing up as your truest version of yourself, and you are not happy because it's haunting you. It is stealing your joy. It's pulling you out of the moment. And if that's where you go to bed every night and you wake up in the morning, and again, you can diminish it. I did. If that's you, it will catch you. And guess what? If it doesn't, and you coasted your way through the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years and let that shadow haunt you, then you have to own that too. And I think like that's where I was unwilling to move forward anymore.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you are new around here, welcome back to the show, or to the show in general. My name is Jared Hamilton, and I'm your host. Now, today is a very, very special, very real episode for you. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing for the third time Christy Campbell on the show. You guys love Christy. If you've been around the show for a while, this is literally her, I believe, third time being on the show. But the cool thing is when I recorded this interview, it was actually in person. I love doing in-person podcasts way more than remote. And this is definitely one that I'm very glad I was in person for. In this episode with Christy, she really opened up about a lot. And I think it's going to resonate a lot with those of you who are in the same trenches, who have been there, who are struggling, because we talked about a lot, but this episode got very heavy. It's a tearjerker for sure. I know me, just as I was getting, like misty eyes myself and getting emotional just being there in the same space as her with this, because I can tell how much it matters and means. And I'm so thankful that she was willing to open up about some of this stuff and share her perspectives and whatnot, because we got into a lot. We started off, we got talking about a lot of the core principles and pillars from her perspective when it comes to coaching people and changing their lives. Then we really got into talking about how to advocate for your own happiness. And then the major thing that we talked about is basically Christy opened up about her divorce and about how she's been able to, in the middle of not just navigate, but she's in the trenches when we were recording this, navigating a divorce and how to navigate it, how to show up for herself, even when it's messy. Because a lot of people, when it comes to that subject, it gets really tough and it gets really hard, and divorces are very rarely clean and cut and everything. So I'm really grateful Christy was so open to being willing to talk about this. We actually were talking off the air about, what she wanted to get into and what we were going to talk about. And she was gracious enough to say, hey, I can talk about my divorce if we want to go that route. And I think it is a big thing that a lot of people struggle with, especially how to keep your head about you during the messiness, during the chaos, how to advocate for yourself and all the things. And Christy does an amazing job with this. And she really opened up and didn't hold anything back, which just shows a testament to who she is and how authentic she is. And she's the real person that she puts online, and it's amazing. So without further ado, let's get into it. I know you're going to wow, words are hard. I know you're going to get a lot of value out of this. I'll talk to you in just a second. Now you have been, this is 3?
I think it's 3.
Three on my show. So because you are a fan favorite. So because of that, what kind of life updates do we have for everyone? What's new in the life of Christy since last time we talked?
Man, that's a big question. There's a lot of new things, I think. Well, my kids are older. Everybody got older. That's what
no
happens.
Shit. Time went on. Wow.
I got older. I turned 40 this year.
Wow.
I just turned 40 a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
Nice. I turn 32 tomorrow.
What?
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think it's funny. I dreaded turning 40 until I turned 40. And then I was like, why do I care? Like, I feel good. Life's pretty solid. Like my body feels healthy. Onward.
Well, so because you've been posting a lot about your personal progress, and you're arguably in the best shape of your life at 40, right?
I'm in pretty good shape. Yeah. I think that, you can be in the best shape of your life in different seasons, and
That's
maybe,
fair.
Yeah. So I think it takes a little while. And I think it's funny. I posted a picture because I did a metabolism class a couple weeks ago, and I shared a picture, and people are like, well, how do you do that? And I'm like, it just takes a lot of time. I was very transparent. Picture 1 to picture 2 took a year to fair.
Your big transformation.
Right. Big transformation of losing weight took a year. And then going from losing weight to have a body that looks more like a fitness type body and have muscle mass and that kind of thing. That took longer. That took years. And so it just takes time. But you can make a really significant physical transformation in 6 to 12 months. It's just, I wanted people to know like the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, on that subject, do you think that's why a lot of people struggle? Like, because their expectations are in like, how many weeks till I can make this happen versus how many years it will take to make this happen?
Yes. And because, and we don't necessarily think about that I mean, to be fair, I think we all are like, give it to me now.
Sure.
I want an Amazon order now.
Yeah.
You know?
Fat loss prime edition.
Right. Amazon Prime me my fat loss now.
Yep.
You know? And so we definitely are in the impulse world where we can get something right away. But in terms of your body, it just doesn't work like that. And so it's much more helpful, I think, to see and hear that timelines can be different. I mean, even so, like I said, my kids got older since last time we talked. My daughter's 4 now. Wow. And I remember thinking once I had her, because I was a coach and had done my own physical transformation before I got pregnant with her. But after, I mean, I still had 30 to 40 pounds to lose, right? And so I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm a coach. I've been doing this old hat. I worked out my whole pregnancy this time. The first 2 I did not. It was a totally different experience. But I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to be back in shape in 3 months. And it did not happen. It took at least a year for me to feel like myself again, and another year before I felt like an athlete again, before I felt like, oh, I'm doing the things that I really like to do. And that was not the timeline that even I thought. I was like, oh, everybody's like, hashtag fit pregnancy. And like, they're like back in shape in 6 weeks. And I was like, cool for you. Like, I'm not knocking it, but that's not typical.
I think that's why so many people, like, at least from my perspective, like they were even talking about it like today at the conference, where if the person going through the trenches, if your expectation is here of what's good, bad, or not, but the person going through the trenches, their expectations is here, great, it looks terrible, you know?
Yeah. And you just don't know it when you're in it either.
Is there a way you like to help get like people, let's say they come into your ecosystem, whether they're a client or in the DMs or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I'm trying to, lose 30 pounds in the next 30 days. Cause that's what Dr. Oz's guest said. Is there a way that like you like to reframe that without like totally discourage? I feel like for me, I have a tendency to be a little almost discouraging. I'm like, well, I don't know where the fuck you heard that, but is there a way that you like to, for those listening that may be a little confused, to help with that?
Well, I just think if you want to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, there's something out there that probably can figure that out. It's just not good for you. And let's just say, I mean, again, that's a stretch even to say. Like 30 pounds in 30 days is nuts. So, but say you wanted to lose 20 pounds in 30 days. That sounds a little less nuts, but still pretty aggressive, right?
So like aggressive.
Super aggressive, but that doesn't sound as crazy. You're like, oh, I'm gonna be down for losing 20 pounds this month. It's just that there's always a price to pay. And that's true for everything. Like not good things, bad things, always. It's always a trade-off.
Totally.
And so when you're going to, make that payday loan, which is what you're doing, you're cashing in a payday loan to get 20 pounds off in a month, you're going to pay heavy interest on that. And so that's not the trade most people want to make.
Right.
And so again, like if you're choosing to do that, just understand the trade-off.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think it's a really good way to put it, because I swear if you can correlate anything to money, everyone's like, oh, fuck. Okay, we're good. You know what I mean?
It's true too, because I think it depends on your background, but I knew without being told that payday loans were not a good thing, right? I think in some places you might not know, and that's okay. Like sometimes you grow up in a place where that is normal, and then you grow out of that and you're like, I wouldn't do that anymore because the trade-off is too high. Yeah. Right? Like it's money, it's real money. You're getting it a legitimate way, but the cost of that is so crazy that when you know better, you would never do it.
Sure.
Right? And I think like it's the same regarding what our expectations are around our bodies. Like we know better. Like if you've done any professional education at all or certifications, like not necessarily college, great, whatever. If you've got a degree, cool. But maybe you've just done some sort of credentialing for whatever you do. Like you would know better. You would know that you can't become like a medical assistant or a nurse, whatever, or even anything without doing certain steps.
Yeah.
But in terms of our bodies, we'll literally buy some bullshit out of the back of somebody's car. Like
You're not
that
wrong.
seems right,
Yeah.
and it's like our brains just turn off because it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you can promise this, then I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
we probably would have like the red flag BS radar on in other categories, but the body stuff, it's hard.
I ask a lot of times. I love it when it's a mom. I'll have a mom who's like, "Oh, I feel like I should be losing weight faster," and I ask her, I say, "When you got pregnant, what would you do if your doctor said, I've got a shot that I can make you have this fucker in like 3 months? Would you take it?" And she goes, "Absolutely not." And she gets defensive. I go, "Well, why?" It's like, "Oh, because it's supposed to take 9. Like, give or take a little bit, a little over, a little under, but like 9 months is like the magic sweet spot with a baby. No one's taking the pill that's going to make the baby in 3 months because everyone knows on paper something bad's going to happen."
Right.
But fat loss, it's like, take my money now.
Yeah, we shouldn't feel bad about it. You don't need to attach any morality to it. Just know that like it's not real.
Yeah. One thing along these lines that I was wanting to ask you is, because like with you and your background and like you at this point, you and your company has helped, I don't even know how many, hundreds, if not thousands of people, and your content has helped thousands and all the things. From a core principle standpoint, like for those listening, what are some of the more foundational core principles that you apply to make all these transformations happen? Because I know every person's situation is different, but there's still probably like a core foundation of principles that people can go, oh, if I check those boxes, I'm probably going to be more successful.
Yeah. For me, I'm much more of relying on like the basic foundational things. I got interviewed recently in a different setting. And they started asking all these questions about hormones and menopause and all that. And I mean, I certainly know some things about that. My answers almost default always to like these basic things that we should be doing to take care of our body, particularly as women. And so if we can agree that those basics are the place that we'd start, like walking a lot and doing strength training and then eating like mostly quality food, balanced plates, like saving sugar and alcohol for occasions and treats, like just those are just some basics. What are they going to get you all the way there? No. I mean, like people are complicated, but like if we just say, okay, those things, and then how are we going to do them and how do we need to like tweak them for us? The core principle that I teach, and I might have even shared this on one of the last 2 episodes that I was on with you, is I teach people what's called the brick method. And the brick method is the idea that imagine you have this like mountain of bricks and you have to get all these bricks up and over a hill, right? That's the game that we're playing. And doing so is accomplishing some goal, right? So we've got two different girls. One's got this pile of bricks and one's down here and she's got this pile of bricks. We've got to get them up and over the hill. Well, the first girl, she is an all or nothing person. And everybody likes to claim all or nothing like it's some sort of badge of honor, right? I'm all in. That's just kind of who I am. I like to be all in on things. But all in girl is committed to 10 out of 10 bricks. That's the most you can move in a day. 10 out of 10. So she is going to be all in. She signs up January 1st. She's like, I'm all in. I'm doing the thing. She commits to moving 10 out of 10 bricks over. So she makes it probably, 10, 14 days. So she moves 140 bricks. Solid, right? Then life happens. Quits. Yeah. Okay, so she quits and she's like, I can't move 2 bricks. That's stupid. Like, I'm just going to wait till I can start again. Life will be a little bit better soon. I'm going to go back to doing these things, right? So she waits a little bit, gets started again another time that year. 10 out of 10 bricks again. Moving those bricks. Moves another couple hundred bricks. Like, let's generously say she moves 200 each time.
Right.
So she moves 200. She starts again later in the year, moves another 200. That's 400 bricks. And then tries again one more time. Same thing, quits after a little bit, right? So she's moved 600 bricks, cool, of her mountain. That's not nothing.
Right.
But the other girl has a different philosophy. And this is what I teach in Fit Me. And this is one of our core foundational things. Her philosophy and what she's supposed to do is move as many bricks as she can for that day. And so whatever she can do is what she needs to do. And so some days she moves 10 bricks and gets them over. Some days she moves 2. Some days it's 4. Some days it's 10 again, and one day it might be 0. But you don't get to quit because we're just moving as many bricks as we can move for that day. So let's say that the girl down here who's doing this philosophy of moving as many as you can for the day, it can be really discouraging. Like, let's be real. You could look up at one point and be like, she's moving 10 bricks at a time. And all I got is 2. Like, this can't be right. Like, and I like this idea of like this hill that you have to go up and over, because sometimes you actually forget how many you've moved. So you're like, look at this mountain behind me. And like, I can't move any more bricks, right? because I haven't done anything. I've made no progress, right? And like you see the people who are all in, it looks so much better.
Right.
Because they're like 10 out of 10 and that's all you see is that like awesomeness. And
Yeah.
you're like, today's a 2-brick day, you know? And so like, let's just say, and I always do the math, let's say that she averages 6 bricks a day. That's a D average. A D average in school is all she gets, 6 bricks a day. And she does that for a year. That's 2,190. 2,190 bricks she's moved up and over that hill as opposed to the all or nothing girl who moved 600. Which one works better?
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. It's not about mindset. It's not about like, yeah, you did it. It's what are your wins for Tuesday? It's if your wins for Tuesday are 2 bricks and you keep going, you're going to win.
Yeah.
It's if you are all or nothing and putting it off for the right time, or you think you have to be perfect and need an excuse to quit, you're going to make less progress, period. It doesn't matter if I'm like motivating you by telling you like, hey, that's not the point. And I think people sometimes get that confused with the reality of like how you make physical change. And so that's one of my core principles.
That's huge. We 100% didn't talk about that on one of the other episodes. I would have remembered that. That was so good. Because I mean, I think I heard it the other day where let's say it's you're at 50% that day. I think actually it was a guy I was rolling with in jiu-jitsu. He's like, man, I'm like, work was hard. It's a 50% day. And I go, but you're here and 100% of 50% is still 100%. So like you're still showing up with whatever shit you do have. And it was a great night of rolls. And I feel it kept the momentum rolling. I feel like it's very much the same thing. Yeah.
And ultimately, sometimes you do have to alter the thing. If you're only doing 2 bricks every single day and there's something you can do about it, well, own that too. That's where coaching can be super helpful, right? Because somebody can be like, hey, if you just do this, this, and this, you can probably do 4.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
Like you're doing your best, but we can make some changes here that's going to make this progress happen faster. The other thing is, in this like visual, if you are like following along with this, really makes sense when we start to think about coaching in community, because a coach can literally stand on top of the hill and be like, hey, just pick that up. Like you can't see what you've done, but I can still see it. And I've done this before. Just keep going. Like, let me kind of guide you through this process. Or like, hey, like I need you to pick up one more. I know you can do one more. Or like, hey, like that's cool for today. Let's go. Like that kind of feedback when you're in the thick of it is incredibly valuable. The other thing that's really important is surrounding yourself with like-minded community is also really important, because then you're all on that same like, brick method philosophy. And so you can be encouraging to someone who's having a 2-brick day and you're on 4, or somebody got a 10 and everybody can be super excited for them. Like, but if you're in the all or nothing group, then you're just setting yourself up for quitting.
Yeah.
You're just waiting for your turn.
Right. I think one thing that you mentioned briefly, but I think that's one of the reasons this works so well, is from the very beginning, you said, okay, you do whatever you can that day, but we can't quit. You could do, if it's a 0 day, you're just not allowed to quit. And I think so many people, when they start this journey, because it's going to take, like we talked about, years or just much longer, is they leave it as a viable option. It's like, okay, I'll do this only if I'm making linear progress, or only if I feel like it, or only if I'm making progress at all. And they almost leave the option of quitting as like, okay, I'll consider it if I think this is a waste of time. And I think the fact that in the beginning you're like, no, do whatever you can, you're just not quitting. Like that's not even a thing that can happen.
Yeah. It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot? People who leave from your perspective, that as an option on the table, or why do you think people do that?
I just think people have never really decided in the first place sometimes. Or when it gets hard, they isolate rather than lean into the support that they're supposed to have. I think we can all be guilty of that sometimes. We're not doing well when things aren't going as planned. Then instead of utilizing what we have in front of us, the support, whether it's family, coach, tools, instead we go the other direction. We pull away. And so I think that's just something we have to grow out of. We have to sort of catch ourselves doing it, and it's a skill set. Yeah. I think it's important for people to understand that when you are learning to take care of your body, or learning to ask for help, or learning to ask for support, or even utilizing a coach, that there is a skill set around that.
Yeah, it's communication.
Right. And so if you've never done that before, it's going to take a little bit of practice. I literally had a conversation with a client 2 days ago, and she was struggling. And I was like, why aren't you texting me? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, I told you, just text me. This is what I'm here for. Right. it's not a judgment situation. It's just, let me know that today went sideways. And she's like, I don't know why I can't do it. Like, and I was like, well, this is what we're also conquering.
Yeah.
P.S. Like, yes, are we going to lose 20 pounds together? For sure. Probably, like, not a problem. But we're also going to fix this problem, which is like, you don't know how to ask for help. And then you pay for things. And then when it's hard, instead of doing it, you actually retreat. So let's solve that problem too.
Yeah. It's funny. I've seen a lot of people who have gotten different levels of coaching, whether it be with us or other people. It's a common thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to bug my coach. And I'm thinking, what? Why'd you hire? One, it's not. If a coach ever signs up for this job and doesn't want their clients reaching out, like it's not even, it doesn't even make sense. But it's, I think people forget that's what we're here for.
Right.
Whether we lead a community, we have one-on-ones or groups, whatever. But I hear that as a common thing a lot is, oh, I don't want to bug my coach. I'm like, that's the title of coach, is so you can, it's not a bad thing, so you can bug them,
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. This may be a dumb question.
No.
For those that struggle with that, whether it be a one-on-one situation, a group or whatever, that's someone who sucks at asking for help. How does someone ask for help? Like, how would you, like, if you're seeing people like in, let's say, your community that are struggling, you're like, hey, this is when you lean in, but they're like, I don't even know how. Do I make a post? How do I ask? Like, do I air my laundry? How would you as a coach like to see someone ask for help?
I think I would just condition the communication first, so that it doesn't have to be when you actually need help.
That's good.
So, like, for example, if you're committed to an 8-week program and you're like, I suck at asking for help, I would commit to, from the jump, committing to posting in the group on Wednesdays and Fridays.
That's good.
For better or worse, however it's going, I'm going to post in there. And so then you've kind of established, like,
you toe tap the water a little bit.
Yes. And I think, again, like, that's sort of like preemptively knowing yourself and saying, like, yeah, I struggle with this. So you might not know that in advance. But I also think that we should just care a little less about what other people think.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if that's the barrier that's holding you back, like, you think your coach is going to judge you, you think somebody in the Facebook group is going to judge you, you think somebody's going to see it, then that's a conversation you need to have with yourself too. And I get that, because it's a thing for us. I mean, anybody who's a people pleaser, that's a thing for. But that's an important conversation too. Like, that's another thing to conquer as a part of this journey, is the fact that you won't ask for help because you're worried someone's going to judge you.
No, I would agree with that. I think almost all problems in life go away with really proper communication, but that even as an introspective side, where I think most people cannot communicate even with themselves. So why they believe everything that they think versus being able to decipher, am I being emotional? Am I being logical? Do I need to act on this? Do I need to just sit with this?
Right.
I think on every level, family, marriage, kids, work, team, coaching, I think everything rises and falls on communication.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so I think if you know that you struggle with that, then I would communicate that from the start to whoever you've signed up with.
Yeah.
And ask them, like, how can I, I know that usually around the halfway point I start to struggle. And last time I did something like this, I ended up just quitting. I don't want that to happen again.
I think we talk about that a lot with like when people ask about like sabotage. Because sabotage has a pattern. It's not just like this random thief in the night that, like, it was the first time it happened. It has a fucking paper trail. And I think that's one of the spots where a lot of people sabotage, whether it may seem like it's a communication issue or whatever it may be. But from a pattern recognition side is, oh, wait, when I get halfway through these 8-week deals or right around 2 weeks in, life always gets busy. Or every time the kid goes through, gets sick, something happens. And then putting things in place preemptively because you know it's going to happen. It's kind of like the idea of staying ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
I think is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. So that's kind of what, I guess that's my piece of advice.
I love that. One thing was because we were talking about it off camera, I would love to dive into, because I think it'll resonate with a lot, because since you've been on last, a lot in your life has changed. Like the divorce has happened and like a lot of life chaos has happened, but and a lot of people lose themselves in that. They get in the worst shape of their life. Their mental health goes in the toilet, and things just like when it rains, it pours. But you seem to have, like, a lot of people didn't even know, like things have happened, and you seem to have had a really good grasp on some of these chaotic times. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that and whatnot.
Yeah, I think, and I told you before we got on here, like, I haven't talked about this too much.
Yeah.
Well, one is divorce sucks.
Yeah.
So anybody who's gone through it knows. So I'm trying not to cry.
You're good. I cried yesterday during one of my interviews, and I wouldn't even be interviewed. My guest asked me, and I'm like, she was making me talk about some stuff, and I'm like, fuck, damn it. So yeah.
The funny thing is there's no way to talk about it without being really real.
Yeah.
Because you can be like, oh, it's fine, or oh, it was like amicable, right? That's what people say.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, it wasn't too much drama, or kids are doing good. Most of the time when like something sucks for real, like in your life, like that's happening, you answer with that answer. How are things? They're good. They're fine.
Yeah.
It isn't like blah blah, and you're like, yeah, but it's okay. And that's okay too, because you can't be like talking about your deep shit all the time, right? But on the other hand, like if you're gonna ask me on this and it's actually gonna matter to people, then I have to answer for real, right? My marriage was an example of somewhere in my life where I was unhappy and I was willing to cope with it. And so my ex-husband and I had spent the vast majority of the last 15 years apart because he's active duty Navy. That's how we met. And in that time we grew apart, and we're really good at loving the kids and supporting each other and loving each other foundationally. But the relationship grew apart.
Right.
And for a long time, I was willing to just be okay with that because he's a good man and a good person, and life was easier that way. So the reason I share that is because I think like we can get that in lots of different areas of our life, like our job, our bodies, or whatever, where we can know that it's not right and we're willing to just stay there anyway.
Yeah.
And so saying that I was unhappy in my marriage was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because it was so much easier just to be busy and cope.
Yeah.
And be busy for me is throw myself into my work, into coaching, into helping other coaches, into creating content, into my kids, into working out. Like that's how I stayed busy. That's how I found purpose. But I was missing something at my core in like my most important relationship.
Yeah.
And so to address that was super hard.
Yeah. That's my MO, like my natural MO when I have emotional stuff or stress or anxiety or whatever is how we talk about like emotional eating, people pour into food. My MO has always been to pour into work. Like I'm really good at distracting with productivity. And it was one of the hardest things I had to overcome personally, because I feel that to my bones, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for you and for maybe some of the other people listening that maybe in that place right now, or really struggling, is there like thoughts or things that you found that was helpful to get through that time, or not to let everything else in your life go sideways or as much as you can when things like that happen?
I think I'm still getting through that time.
Sure.
My advice would be, the vast majority of my life I've been fortunate to coast and be able to throw myself into work or to do things where I wasn't like knocked to my knees, and felt alone. And again, maybe that's on me. I could have stayed exactly where I was, but the process of trying to carve out like who I am and what I want in my life made me alone.
Yeah.
And that's startling.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I would tell people is like, if all of a sudden you've started to make moves for yourself and things are falling apart as a part of that, and then all of a sudden you're alone, like just know that that's how I felt too. And it's funny because again, like the way you asked the question is like, well, how did you keep things together, or how did you whatever? I mean, there were certain things that I got to default to, which I would attribute to years of creating a healthy lifestyle, right? So like when things were really hard, I would walk.
You had good habits and rituals already.
Right, so I would walk. Like I didn't put a bunch of bullshit in my house, food wise. So then it wasn't like, oh, today's stressful. Like, let me just go eat, you know? So those things were already in place. But I think the part that like maybe is most relevant for people who are listening, again, like if you want the real deal, is that like being alone and starting to do things that are super hard means that you're going to have to come to terms with your own actual bullshit. And I have just started to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't think most people would know that about me. That like, I feel like I didn't even know it was there.
Sure.
But all of a sudden when you're broken and you're hurting or things are hard, like you have to figure out like, how did I get here? Right. And again, like without blame or anything, saying like, what are the things about me, bad or good, or who I am, or things that I've squashed, things I've chosen to stay small, things that are painful from the past that I've carried. And then why do I think that that's okay to ignore those things, to stay small, to stay pleasing everyone else, and to complacently float through, you know? And I am not attributing any of that to my ex, actually.
Sure.
Like I said, he's a good man. This was more me figuring out me.
Yeah.
But that process, I mean, like, I know it shows up for people in other spaces, like their physical body. Like people who are listening to this might relate, and it might not be their relationship that they're unhappy in. It might be themselves, like their own physical body. It's like, well, how did you get here? Yeah, you ate food, but there's pieces of you that led you to this. Like there's a reason that you have emotional eating. Like there's a reason that it hurts, you know, when you self-sabotage. Like self-sabotage to me is like the surface level version of kind of like just floating by, like how I was in my relationship, where it was like, it seems like no big deal when you do it.
Right. Totally.
Because you're accustomed to it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, why do you do that? And so for me, this season has been about personal growth in a way that I've never done.
Yeah.
Because personal growth for me has always been learn how to be a better coach, learn how to be a better business owner, learn how to do something more like physical, you know, become more skilled. That has always been personal growth.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. But that's not this season.
Yeah.
This season has been coming to terms with who I am and why, you know, why I was choosing to stay small, why I was more willing to be complacent with a status quo than be happy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know if that's too much information.
I love, like in a weird, fucked up way, I love this so much. And I think it resonates a lot with the audience. And it's a way harder version of a lot of the stuff that I've been in a different way talking about. Like there's so many people where just sitting with themselves in silence for 5 minutes, they would rather like do the keto diet or like starve themselves or run a fucking marathon because they are alone with themselves for 5 minutes and they have to reckon with their thoughts and their beliefs and things like that, versus you were almost forced to do it. Like not forced, but it was almost like because of the situation, it like dumped you into that, is what it seems. So you're like, oh, well, who am I? Why did I get here? Why did I stay? It's making you all these things come to the surface. Because I view personal growth either two ways, like what you were talking about, like become stronger, be more, do all this. But then there's the deeper side where you're like, well, who am I? Questioning beliefs. It's like if like a tree's growing, it's like the branches side above ground, but then there's also the roots grow deeper. And I feel like personal growth is both, but a lot of people look at the sunshine and rainbow side of, oh, look how big my tree's getting. Look at the apples it's making versus, oh, those roots are growing really, really deep. Maybe I need to move the roots. Oh, there's a blockage. Maybe I need to uproot the tree and put it somewhere better, you know? And I think people don't realize that. And I think a lot of coaches make changing your life in being an advocate for yourself all sunshine and rainbows. And it's not. It's fucking hard. And that's like what you're describing.
Yeah, and I think you get into those darker times where you're like feeling alone and you actually can retract from a lot of people. Yeah. And that can also be a turning point, like pivotal, because we can disconnect from people in our life and maybe some of that's good. But also I found myself for the first time not wanting to connect with people. because I was like not feeling good.
Yeah.
But I think that what's cool about that though, again, it's like I'm still in it in some ways, is that pain of feeling like you're on your own can be the catalyst for healing and for real growth and for living the life that you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of things in my life are pretty great. And it's not like I needed to like flip everything over.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's like, why didn't I, and I even like asking myself that question like that feels like I'm being hard on myself, and I'm trying to be like less of that.
Sure.
Like, why didn't you know this earlier, you idiot? You know, like, but there's just so much shit that like I didn't realize from growing up that I feel like has made and shaped how I view and interact with people.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I'm a good coper and I would just rather be like, I'm good. I never dealt with any of that stuff. I know a lot of people do that through therapy and through different expressions of like thinking about, you know, how they've become the person that they are and like dealing with some of that. I'd never done that ever. And I think I wouldn't have started had I not like been in this kind of like difficult season.
Yeah. Well, that's why I can't remember who told this to me. It was years ago, and then I forgot about it. A mentor of mine says, with every new level comes a new devil. I always thought it's like one of those kind of corny little things, but then like I really thought about it, and every season of my life, I'm like, whoa, the shit I'm going through now would have crushed the old version of me. Now it just sucks. It sucks to go through it now, but it would have crushed old Jared, right? But that never ends, you know, because then you're always getting more aware. You're always going through new things, and then you have new trials and new storms and new things. Whereas like what you're going through now, like, do you think old Christy would have been able to handle it like you're handling it now?
I think old Christy would have just stayed complacent.
So she wouldn't have handled it. She would. That's the beautiful thing about growth for me with this stuff. Whether it be on this level, whether it be fucking fat loss or whether it doesn't matter. Business is all of it for me is like that. And that's why like I've really tried, and it's been hard when going through rough times to reframe that. Like we all know like the whole, we should be more positive and all this stuff. But like when stuff sucks, sometimes we need to just admit how bad it is and not pretend. But then at the same time, understand that like, this is teaching me something. This is causing some skill to get developed or some level of awareness to get developed or healing to get developed or whatever.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do feel like that's a piece of it too. Like when you're going through hard things, like your perspective for other people changes.
Yeah.
And I've always considered myself an empathetic person.
Sure.
But it's different now. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, like, I don't know, I would consider here's the thing, like, everybody has these layers of what they show the world. Because not everybody's on Instagram, like, showing their life. Like, you know, we show stuff because we're coaches and because that's what we do. And I think we inherently have radar for, like, superficial, right? Like, we're like, those people are being fake, whether it's in person or online. Like we kind of have that radar, and sometimes we consume it anyways because it's fun, and sometimes we keep those people because they're fun, but like we know that's not the real thing. Sure. Right. And then we have people who I think are genuinely being authentic. However, it's still very surface level. So what I mean is, and again, part of that's like just functioning in your life. Like you go through your life, but the things that are actually wrong that are bothering you, and this is where it like really relates to body stuff, is like those things are always there. And if you think that those aren't impacting you, you're wrong.
Right.
And so the thing is like you may on a surface level be in yourself, doing your best in your life. And if every single day you're talking shit to yourself about your body, and every single day you're haunted by your weight, or you're haunted by the fact that you quit or you give up on that, I promise you're not yourself. There's some piece of yourself that's broken and stuck there. Yeah. And I think that that's sort of like what I understand now that I didn't before is, again, like that's not being fake. It's just you're showing up in your world the best that you can show up, whatever, right? Like everybody doesn't need to know your stuff. But on the other hand, like if you're not dealing with it, like you're not really your best self at your job or in your relationships or any of it. Like you've stayed small because and that's kind of what I'm learning is like, because there were things that I just didn't deal with on my own, like I was still staying small. So it's not like the person that I was putting out in the universe was fake, but it wasn't the authentic me either.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I was still willing to not say things to please people. I didn't want to rock the boat. You know, I definitely didn't want to look it wasn't like I wanted to look perfect. It was like I wanted to not disrupt everybody's expectation that things were fine. Right? And that I was coping.
Yeah.
So that's my own version of fake.
Yeah.
Yeah? I mean, you didn't know anything was going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had, to be honest, I had a feeling.
Right.
But I also felt like it wasn't the most appropriate time to say something. It's
by the way, is life really hard right now?
Right. You know what I mean? So like I feel like sometimes I have a sixth sense for shit like this, but then it was one of those things like I was torn because I also didn't want to like overstep, but from my side of things either. So, but like I had a feeling, but but I'm also extremely grateful you're so willing to talk about this so openly and get emotional. And
I don't know if it's helpful. I actually have no idea if what I'm sharing right now is just like me talking or I can tell like if this is going to be helpful information.
So I can tell you, and trust me, it's my show. I know my community. I know all of this. This is helping more than you can imagine. And I would bet because this is a not fun subject to talk about, and the same thing with like that we've been talking about, like making yourself small, like that's making this small. That's making like, you know, like your mess or your story, like, oh, this is, it's that normal inner dialogue of like, oh, I'm not, the stuff that we see all the time. I think I would assume that's just what's happening right now, but I can tell you that this is going to help a lot.
Well, I just think a lot of people are suffering a lot more than they say.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are more in pain than they say.
Yeah.
And that sucks. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling that, I get it.
Something that I've said for a long time, and this is really hard for a lot of people, is I think lots of people are suffering, but because they've been there for so long, it doesn't hurt so bad that they're aware of. It's like it's like if we jump in a hot tub right now, we're all like, oh, fuck, that's a little hot. 3 minutes later, we're fucking chill. We're cool. Like it's not a big deal because we adapt. And I think so many people adapt to whether it be their marriage that they have been unhappy with, or their 10 pounds that they've been unhappy with, and now it's turned into 15, then 20, then 30, then 40, then 50, or their once a week binge is now a 5-day a week binge, but it's grown, or they're suffering on any level. It's just, it's been there, so it doesn't hurt so bad. But this is why I think it's so important, like you showing what it looks like to, as hard as it is, be an advocate for yourself and an advocate for your happiness. And the hardest thing ever is doing the uncomfortable thing to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people can relate in whatever category that they're in, where the hard thing is. Mm-hmm. But for me, there was like a lot of shame associated with this.
Sure.
Like people's expectations not being met.
Yeah.
Hurting someone in my life. So I think like shame is like a huge part of this for people, because when they are addressing the hard things, it's usually like you inherently know that a lot of people are going to talk about it. Yeah. That sucks. Yeah. That's just true. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, like, it's kind of weird to share. Like, we'll probably talk about body stuff and mindset stuff and like all the normal things. And I love talking about that. But also, I just wanted people who are in pain to know that they're not alone.
Yeah. And a lot of people think they are. A lot of people are fully convinced that they're the only ones. That's why I can't remember. I love the way you worded it. When we first started talking about this, the way you worded, I'm trying to think how'd you word it exactly. It was so, I felt like there was a like, woof, that like happened when you're like, I was unhappy in my marriage, but I just accepted that was okay. And it was, however the word, like it was perfect. And I feel like several hundred or thousand people went, I have just been heard and felt for the first time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, I think people also think that there's no route to go that doesn't have suffering, because staying in a shitty situation sucks and it's only going to get worse. But then making the changes to advocate for yourself and your happiness sucks as well. But there's no route that doesn't end in suck. But one is, it's, at least to me, seems like it's A, on your terms, and B, it's the most honest form of self-love. Even though you feel shame, even though you feel all the things right now, you feel this level that's never been tapped before, but in spite of, you're still making the right decision in your actions. That's what's best for you. I don't see what is a more truer form of showing up for yourself, loving yourself, and advocating for yourself.
Yeah. And then you can't bury it. Like, once you've taken that step, then you have to deal with like
all of it.
Yeah. And again, whatever that is, like, if it could be relationship stuff, it could be body stuff, it could be job stuff. Like, if you've been unhappy in your job for a long time and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm quitting, I'm done. Like, I am done being unhappy. I've been here for so long, I'm done. And then you quit, and then the next day you're like, I have no job and I have no money and I have no nothing, and everybody's gonna be like, what the fuck?
Yep.
You know, like, then you actually are in the thick of it, and it's just easier to go back.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much easier just to be like,
yep,
let's just go back.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who's in that. He's always been in like some stage of law enforcement, whether it be officer, corrections, like some always level of military law enforcement for the last decade plus. And he got fired, and he has been suicidal ever since, because his entire identity and everything he knows is gone. And he is now having to reckon with who he is, why he let himself stay in such a shitty job for so long. Now that he sees like it's literally like the same thing, but over here.
Yeah.
But I feel like we see this happen. I've even seen this in the coaching space, like people who built their dream, what they thought they wanted, and then they built this huge thing. Now they don't want it. So they're like, fuck, now I have all these coaches. Now I have like hundreds of clients. Now I have all this stuff. What are people going to think if I quit? You know, whatever it may be. And it's hard, but it's the only way to continue to grow and fight for your own happiness. Yeah.
And again, like, then when you actually have to deal with it, that part's really hard. And so that's where you get to actually change.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the magic can happen. Because if it's hard, if it's lonely, if it's sucky, if it's whatever, that's the pieces.
Yeah.
Like, I had to come to terms with, why did I go 10 to 15 years and not tell this person?
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
So that piece is hard.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you're going 2, 4, 6, 10 years in squashing yourself, whatever that looks like, when you actually decide that you're not going to do it anymore, then you have to figure out, well, why were you doing that in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And then that part's hard. And so again, like, it feels like I'm saying hard a lot, but that's what it feels like when you're in it.
Yeah.
And so I remember the year that like my body changed and thinking that was hard. It's not hard compared to this.
It's interesting. So many times in the time you and I have known each other, and almost most conversations we have, it's always, and I'm sure maybe it always preparing you for this moment, I don't know, that you run to the hard thing. Like, we have so many jujitsu, like, fuck, an hour ago we were talking about a jujitsu role. Like, for those that don't know, jujitsu, or Christy's a purple belt in jujitsu, which means she can beat me up, because I'm just a winnable blue belt. So I just got my 4th stripe. Yes. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, but we were just talking about, you have this like this giant person you roll with, that he was we call that at my academy dick jitsu, because he's being a dick. He like probably has 100 or so pounds on you, and he is like crushing your skull and doing all. For those that don't know jiu-jitsu, it can be like, there are positions that are, they're pressure positions. They are meant to suck. And then there's like dick moves. Like I have a very top heavy game. Like, I get on top of people and squish them in a polite way. But there are some people who will like literally like drop their elbow on your head and try to make your brain pop. And it's just not cool. But when we were talking, you go, I thought about tapping. I thought about like maybe not rolling with him, but you said, no, I need to do this. It's hard. It sucks, but I need to do it to get me the skill set and to get me the growth and all the things that you're referring to, but you ran straight to it. When I talk to you, it reminds me of my favorite book. One of my favorite books of all time is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And the entire book is about resistance is required. And the thing that you want is through some fucking uncomfortable shit. And there's a tactical side to running to it. But I feel like that is just like the epitome of who you are. I know it may not feel like it right now.
Somebody said that to me once about my hiking, because I'm terrified of heights.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that like a couple years ago.
And I've been doing more difficult mountains that are higher. And someone said that to me recently, and I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
I thought of it.
You're like, wow, this is uncomfortable. Sign me up.
Well, I think I don't know why. And again, that is a skill set also.
Yeah.
When you start to learn, like, okay, if I choose to put myself in challenging situations, I'm going to learn and grow. But I can tell you for certain with open transparency that there's a category of that is 100% real and growth, but is also easy. And so when I say that, I'm talking like, I remember the physical transformation that I made in my body and how I felt. And I shared that on the past podcast episode. I was not in a good body place. I had, 10 knee surgeries, and I was 50 pounds overweight and no idea how to get out of there except the dieting that I'd learned from my mom. And the dieting wasn't working, and I was questioning all of the things about myself. I had lost pieces of my identity. Like, I thought I was an athlete. I didn't feel like an athlete. I thought I was like, like somebody who felt capable. I didn't feel capable because I kept quitting all of these diets that I was doing. Like, there were pieces of me that just were compromised in that season. And so it was very hard to put myself out there and go and have a coach, help me. And I had no faith that I could do it. I certainly was in a place where physically it felt hard. So when I look back on that and I say that was hard, but that's not like now, the reason that I say that is because I had some evidence in my history that I could do physical things. I'd grown up as an athlete. I had done things before that had given me evidence that I could do it. And so maybe I had lost it and I was searching to find it. And I was like, I need it back. And that was exactly what I needed. So it was very hard. And I was, in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad that I had support.
Yeah.
The reason that I say that this is different is because these are like the dark, twisty places, the places that I have no evidence.
I see.
That I am identifying as someone who would be much easier to stay complacent.
I see.
That is who I've always been.
Got it.
So I am actually going to be something different.
Yeah.
That's hard.
There's even like the brain chemistry side of that, is because the relationship your identity and your subconscious mind have is like a mother bear, and you're changing who you are. You're changing the very characteristics of like your identity, who you are, what you like, all the things, because you're not happy. So it's like you're changing, which everyone should be in seasons of remaking themselves. But it's because the brain only knows this. It's safe, even though it sucks.
Yeah.
That's the thing I try to teach people is your brain doesn't give a fuck if you're happy. It's why it tries to sabotage you to what is most comfortable, even though it has only evidence of suffering. But now you're like, I want to become this version of myself. Holy shit. I've never done that and been there and things like that.
And it wasn't just in my marriage. It was in every category.
Right.
Like, I think that I play small in most categories. And again, like, complacent is maybe not the right word. It's more of just like a go with the flow. Like, I can adapt. I can make it work. I can, whatever it needs to be. I'm good at coping. I always said that, and so deciding to become a different version of myself, like identity wise, like we're talking about, or just saying like, actually, this is not who I am. I just have defaulted to this,
Sure.
It's scarier because, again, part of the pain that is the current situation is because of that. And so you have to like own that piece. And then as you're changing it, it's still just you. Mm-hmm. Like, literally no one can do it for you.
Yeah.
No one can start to have you, no one can help you let go of the things that are holding you back, except for you. No one can take the action step forward to do something different, except for you. No one can continue to do it and do the work, even except for you.
Sure.
And so that part can be both scary and empowering, because at the same time, it is not about anyone else except for you. And soon as you start to capture that, well, then it starts to be hopeful, because then it's not just pain and feeling alone, or just because I feel like that's what people are hearing now. It's like, yes, that is the place where things will change for the better. And if you are capturing that moment and you're like, well, no one's going to do this but me, then let's start to do it. And then that starts to shape a different future. And you do become different.
Right.
And I'm in the middle of that. I don't know how it's going to show up for me as a coach or as a business owner or in my relationships, like future relationship, my friendships, my whatever. Like, I don't know. But I'm wanting to be a better version of myself and not just be fitter.
Yeah.
Not be leaner or not be stronger. Like, I've always been good at those things. Like, even coaching or business skill sets and stuff, like if you put it in front of me, I will learn how to do it and I will work hard at it. That part, again, although hard, is not uncomfortable for me. Sure. This is like deeply uncomfortable. Yeah. Even sharing all this on this episode super sucks, guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you.
To be fair, I did ask. I asked off camera if it was cool, and no,
and I actually would rather share it now, because I'm still in it, but I'm a little bit in the next stage. People who follow me, if you're listening to this and you follow me, you're like, I didn't know, Christy. Well, why didn't you tell us that everything sucked? And like, why didn't you tell us you were going through a divorce? I wasn't ready to tell you, and I don't have to.
Right.
And you don't have to tell anybody anything.
Right.
And I needed to be a little bit insular for a little while, and I'm still in it. And so I could choose to wait another year or 2 years when I know I will feel a lot better and talk about it then. But I feel like it would be valuable to hear now.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited to, like, once you're call it on the other side of this hump, have another episode and be like, okay, where are things at now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Things are changing for me. Like, I'm tapping into like more alternative types of healing that I've never even thought about before. Different breath work, different meditation, different things like that. Like plant medicine, things that I'm like open to seeing, like that piece of like using some of the lessons from humans in our ancient past and just allowing that to be a part of this. And again, like, you can do whatever version of that is suitable for you. But I've never done that. I've never taken the time.
That's amazing. This has been so good. I know you feel like you didn't do anything, but I think you did way more than what you think. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm in the funny place where, because this is so new, I literally have no idea if this is helpful. It just feels like me telling you where I'm at.
Of course that's the ego. Of course it's going to feel like that. That is literally the ego trying to, because again, you've been, like you said, you've played small. So now you're playing big. That is the ego trying to make small of what you're doing right now.
And it feels like I should. It feels like I should be like, this is no big deal, guys. You have way bigger problems than this. Like, even me sharing this is dumb. You know?
It's not. And I hope to God.
Or selfish.
No, it's not. Like, I'm being selfish because I made you like stop the middle of your day to come over here and do this. So I'm hoping that you're going to have all these almost about to get divorced women reach out to you, be like, oh my gosh, Christy.
Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be necessarily your relationship. Like, if you are stuck and alone and just feeling like you are in the thick of it, then reach out to me. Send me a DM. Yeah. At least know that you're not by yourself. But if you are actively moving towards being the better version of yourself, if that's leaving a job, if that's leaving a relationship, if that's finally taking care of your body, because for a lot of people, this frontier is body related. Mm-hmm. Like mine, it wasn't. I have conquered that 10 years ago, but this is different. But it can be very similar for you. And again, like, that can be very isolating, and nobody's going to be able to be like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. Okay, cool. If you need anything, just reach out. Like, I get that that's our normal social exchange, but that's not helping you. And I completely am aware of that place.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm sharing it, is because like, if you're in that place, like you are not by yourself, but dealing with your own like dark and twisty shit, and like also choosing to not play small and choosing to be happy, because you only get one life. And you can self-care and pretend.
Yeah.
So you can, and again, I think like you can fake it. It may not be that you're being a fake person. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm like we were talking about, superficial, where you're like totally a facade. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, if you have something that inherently bothers you all the time, and you are pouring yourself into everything else so that it can show up as like, I'm fine because these things, but this one thing is killing me. I promise you, you are not yourself. You are not showing up as your truest version of yourself, and you are not happy because it's haunting you. It is stealing your joy. It's pulling you out of the moment. And if that's where you go to bed every night and you wake up in the morning, and again, you can diminish it. I did. And again, I'm not saying, and I'm being careful how I say this, because this is not about my ex. It wasn't him. It was me.
Sure.
It was me. It was like my own unhappiness that I was squashing, or the things that I actually thought or wanted that I was squashing. So if that's you, it will catch you. And guess what? If it doesn't, and you coasted your way through the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years and let that shadow haunt you, then you have to own that too. And I think like that's where I was unwilling to move forward anymore.
That's huge. That's amazing. You're fucking amazing, Christy. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been incredible.
Sorry for the tears.
I love it. No,
Thank you for allowing me to have tears.
This is, yeah. No, I like, it's anymore after my like journey through like therapy and stuff, I will like cry like nobody. Like it's so, I'm like, what? This is stupid. So
I'm just starting to get comfortable with like being like, okay, this is how I feel.
Oh,
Like,
I still
I'm
hate
just
it.
present with it,
Yeah.
and just be like, okay, that's, you're feeling sad, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling whatever those feelings are. And like, you know,
yeah,
just let it be there
totally.
and let it go. And I do want to say, because you did ask me at the beginning, like your first question was like, how did you cope? You know? And I'm like, I just didn't, right?
Yeah.
Like I did, but I didn't. Is that our physical body is deeply connected to our mind. And so if there was one thing that I for sure did right during this season, which was like to rely on those habits and to default to some of that, because guess what? Like a sweaty workout will reset your mind. You have to be present in it. And so you can pull out of the worry or the anxiousness or the fear and just be in the moment of like trying to breathe, you know, because you're doing a workout. That's good for you.
Yeah.
Going for walks. You can walk and walk and walk, and your mind will start to relax. It might be a time when you can process things.
Yeah.
And so like using that physical thing matters. If you feed your body with good food, you're going to sleep better. Sleep is really important if you're struggling with things. If you are eating garbage, you are going to feel worse because of the garbage. Like you could have mood swings just from sugar. So why would you want to add that on top? And so if you're soothing with sugar or with food because things are hard in your life, which a lot of people are, then it's okay to say like, I'm going to need to find something else that is actually more positive way to like soothe my body that'll actually be better. So I do think that there can be some takeaways around that, like maybe just walking.
Yeah. I love that.
If you become a walker because, you know,
Yeah.
life's hard, then that's good for you.
Yeah, totally. It's so good. Now, where can people find you? Because I know they're going to want to find you. So where can people find you?
Two places are the best place. So on Instagram at Christy May Campbell. And so I try to show up there daily in my stories and share my dogs and my kids and whatever I'm up to. And also on my podcast. So I have a podcast that's short form. It's usually 10 to 15 minutes every day. It's called Fit Me Coffee Talk. And I do it probably 3 times a week. So there's a handful of little episodes. It's stuff that you can think about and apply in your day. And it's meant to be directional is what I would call it. It's like kind of help you get clear on a direction even for the day.
I love that. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We will talk to you guys very soon.
Okay, bye.
And we are back. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. I know if you stuck around for the whole episode, you probably got some tears in your eyes right now, and you got a lot of value from this. I really, really hope so. I'd like it if you would. If you've listened to this, I would love it if you would go reach out to Christy. I know we put all her contact info below, so that way you can go follow her, keep up with her, message her, things like that. Tell her that that you got a lot out of this and things like that, and it would mean a lot. If before you leave, I do have a lot of other things in the description of the video for you. I have, if you're new around here and you're not very familiar with like my content or kind of where to get started, I have a few different things for you. You can join my Facebook group there, down there, where we have kind of a home base, for our people. That way you can get the help that you need. That's a little bit deeper and more problem solving content. And that's just like a home base where you can go to get loved on, to get supported and things like that. If you haven't gone through my free course, my free fat loss course called the Fat Loss Checklist, if you're just sitting there, you're not even sure like where to turn, like what sources are right to listen to, everything seems to butt heads with each other, and you just want to know how to get to where you want to be without giving up your life, I have a course for it, and it's completely for free. So definitely check that out at the link below as well. And then I do have some other stuff down there if you want to apply for coaching, and if you want to follow me on my other socials, that's all down there as well. So otherwise, I appreciate you tuning in today. Be sure and subscribe if you haven't already. I love you, and I will talk to you next time.